Have you ever felt like everything is lost? Like your life is a dark tunnel with no way out? Before continuing with this story, I want to ask you a question. Are you brave enough to believe, even when everything seems to be against you? If so, stay until the end because this story might restore your faith. And if you're someone who believes in miracles, subscribe and join us in every story we touch here with our hearts. Because sometimes all we need to keep going is a little bit of hope. It was a gray day, literally. The sky was covered with heavy clouds. The wind whispered a sad tune. And in the middle of that cold landscape, an elderly man walked slowly, his gaze lost and his shoulders hunched. His name was Don Elias. He was 76 years old, and until a year ago he had everything. A loving wife, a daughter who visited him every weekend, and a woodworking shop he had built with his own hands. But in less than 6 months, life flipped him over like a dry leaf in the wind. His wife passed away from a sudden illness. His daughter, after an accident, fell into a coma, and the workshop, he had to sell it to pay the hospital bills. Now, every morning, Elias walked to the same park bench. The same one, always the same. There he sat and looked at the sky. Sometimes he prayed. Other times he just cried silently. People saw him and thought he was crazy. But no, he was just waiting for a miracle. Would you like something unexpected to happen in this park? Do you believe that God can use pain to create something beautiful? Then don't go, because what's about to happen will shake your soul. That day, everything seemed the same. Don Elias arrived as always at the park, settled on his bench, and took out from his pocket a small, worn photograph. His daughter, Clara, at only 10 years old, hugging him while he held a kite. A tear fell onto the picture. "How long, Lord?" he murmured. "How long this silence?" It was then that he heard a little voice beside him. "Why are you crying, sir?" Elias jumped. Beside him, standing, was a small boy no older than 7. Messy hair, patched pants, and a smile that stood out against the grayness of the surroundings. "It's nothing, son. Just memories," Elias replied, trying to smile. "My grandmother says that when someone cries, they're making space for God to put something beautiful inside." Elias looked at him in surprise. He wasn't used to children approaching him, and even less to hearing such deep words from someone so small. "What's your name?" he asked. "Matías. And you?" "Elias." The boy sat next to him without asking for permission, as if he had known him his whole life. "I come here because my dad went to heaven. My grandmother says that sometimes sadness wants to live in the heart, but that one must be brave and keep the door closed to it." Elias looked at him with teary eyes. That boy didn't know it, but his words were healing his soul. Do you also believe that there are people who come into our lives by chance? If this story is touching your heart, like it and leave a comment. Hope lives in me, because what Matías will do in the next pages, you'll never forget. Since that day, Matías and Elias began meeting every morning. The elderly man, who had once carried only sadness, started bringing with him a thermos of hot chocolate and 2 tin cups, one for himself and another for the boy who, unknowingly, had begun to light up his life. "Today I dreamed of my daughter Matías," he said one day, as the steam from the chocolate rose between them. "She was awake. She looked at me, smiled, and what did she do? She said, 'Dad, keep waiting. Don't give up.'" Matías smiled and settled on the bench, hugging his legs. "You know what I think? That hope is like a seed. You have to water it every day with faith, even if you don't see anything grow." Elias closed his eyes. How was it possible that such a small child spoke with so much wisdom? He felt that God was speaking to him through that child. A few days later, Matías didn't show up, nor the next day, or the next one. Elias began to worry. The bench was cold without the presence of the boy. The silence, which had once been usual, now hurt more. 5 days passed. And then, on the 6th day, a middle-aged woman appeared, her face marked by exhaustion and worry. "Are you Don Elias?" "Yes." "Do you know me?" "My name is Rosa. I'm Matías's grandmother. He talked to me about you before he got sick." The elderly man felt a lump in his throat. "Is he okay?" "They hospitalized him. He's in a delicate condition. But he told me that if I ever came to the park and found you, I should give you this." The woman took out a small envelope. Inside, there was a folded sheet with the shaky handwriting of a child. "Don't stop waiting, Don Elias. Sometimes God takes his time, but he always arrives. I'm going to get better. And you'll also see your daughter wake up. If this made you feel something, share this video with someone who's silently struggling. Maybe, like Elias, they just need a Matías in their life. Subscribe so you don't miss the next part, because the miracle has not yet begun." That night, Elias couldn't sleep. Matías's letter was on his chest, wrinkled from how many times he had read it. How can a child have so much faith, and I so little? He wondered as he looked at the ceiling of his modest room. "Forgive me, Lord, for giving up too soon." The next day, Elias did something he hadn't done in months. He went to the hospital. He asked for permission to visit Matías. At first, they hesitated. But when he said his name, the nurse looked at him with a smile. "So, you're Don Elias. Matías talked about you every day. He's waiting for you eagerly." The elderly man entered the room. The child was connected to a machine, pale, but when he saw him, his eyes lit up. "Don Elias," he whispered with a weak but excited voice. "I knew you'd come." Elias walked over and gently took his hand. "I'm here, champ. I brought hot chocolate. But this time I'll save it for when you get out. And your daughter, how is she?" Elias took a deep breath. "She's still in a coma. But this time, I came to tell you something I never thought I'd tell anyone." Matías looked at him, curious. "I'm starting to believe again." The boy smiled, a weak smile, but full of light. "Then we've already won," he said, "because having hope is also being brave, right?" Elias nodded with tears in his eyes. At that moment, there was no pain that could stand against the truth that this little one had just reminded them both of. Are you also fighting with something that seems impossible? Write in the comments, "I choose to have hope, because the greatest battle is first won in the heart." Subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and don't miss what's about to happen, because sometimes what seems like the end is just the beginning of the miracle. 2 weeks passed. Elias visited Matías every day. He told him stories, talked about his workshop, promised him that one day they would build a kite together like the one in the old photo. And one day, Matías was gone. No, he hadn't died. He had been discharged. The little one recovered in a way that the doctors couldn't explain. His system responded in an extraordinary way. One of them said, as if something or someone was lifting him from the inside. Elias, with his heart full of gratitude, knew exactly what it was: faith. When they returned to the park together for the first time after his recovery, Matías took Elias's hand and stopped in front of their usual bench. "This bench won't be for crying anymore, right?" "No, son. Now it will be for giving thanks." They sat down. The elderly man opened his old thermos, and they shared the hot chocolate in silence. The city was still as noisy, still as gray, but in that little corner of the park, the whole world shone. Then Elias's phone rang. He looked at it. It was the hospital. His breath caught in his throat. "Yes?" He answered, his voice trembling. Don Elias? This is Dr. Ramos. You need to come. Your daughter just woke up. The elderly man couldn't speak. He just let the tears fall. Matías looked at him, not fully understanding. What happened? Elias hugged him tightly. A miracle happened, son. A miracle that only happens when one dares to wait, even if it hurts. Do you realize? Sometimes the answer comes when we no longer have strength. But hope was always the bridge. If this story touched your soul, share this video with someone who needs to remember they're not alone. And subscribe, because in the next part, we'll see how Elias, Clara, and Matías discover together that life still has so much to give if one has the courage to wait. Elias didn't remember ever running so much in his life. He got on the bus with his heart racing and his hands trembling. Every minute felt like an eternity. What if it wasn't true? What if he had heard wrong? But when he entered the hospital room, there she was, Clara, with her eyes open, looking at him. "Dad," she whispered. "Is it you?" Elias fell to his knees, as if his legs couldn't hold such a miracle. "Yes, my girl. Yes, it's me. Thank you, my God. Thank you." The doctors said there was no logical explanation. She was months without significant brain activity. A nurse murmured, "This doesn't happen every day." But Elias knew that faith doesn't need logic to work. The days passed. Clara was recovering little by little, and when she was strong enough, Elias took her to the park. There, Matías was waiting for them with his usual smile. "Is she Clara?" he asked with bright eyes. "Yes," Elias replied. "And I want you to know something, son. You helped save both of us." Clara knelt down in front of the boy, still weak but emotional. "My dad talked about you every day, even when I was asleep. Thank you for not leaving him alone." Matías shrugged with that innocence that only children have. "I just did what my grandma taught me. When someone is sad, you have to be close, even if you don't say anything." "And you? Are you close to someone who needs company?" Write in the comments. I want to be hope for others, because sometimes the greatest miracle is simply being present. Subscribe and turn on the bell, because the last 2 chapters of this story will show you how a wounded life can become a source of light for others. Time passed, and the bench in the park was no longer just a resting place. It became a small altar of stories, laughter, and gratitude. Clara, fully recovered, started going every Saturday with her dad and Matías. They brought buns, hot chocolate, and open ears for anyone who needed to talk. One afternoon, a man with a tired face and a lost gaze approached. He sat a few meters away, his head down, saying nothing. Matías stood up, grabbed one of the buns, and without asking, offered it to him. "It's fresh," he said, smiling. "And if you want, you can sit with us. There's room for sad stories, but also for those that end well." The man looked at him in silence, and then accepted. He didn't speak much, but as he left, he smiled. A shy smile, pained, but real. "Did you see that?" Clara said to her father. It's like something inside him changed. Elias looked at her with pride. Because what changes the world, Clara, are not speeches, the small acts filled with faith. Matías interrupted, raising his cup of chocolate. "Let's toast to that, to hope, because sometimes being brave is just continuing to believe, even when you see nothing." Everyone laughed. And in that moment, in that ordinary park, under that normal sky, something sacred was happening. Do you realize? The ordinary becomes miraculous when we live it with faith. Write in the comments, "I want to be light for someone." And don't forget to share this story if it touched your heart. Subscribe, because in the final page, you'll discover why Matías came into their lives and how a simple child can change someone's world forever. It was a sunny day. The trees in the park gently dropped their leaves, as if silently celebrating what was about to happen. Elias had prepared something special. He had been working secretly in his workshop for weeks. When Matías arrived, he found the old man with Clara, both wearing knowing smiles. "What's going on? Why are you looking at me like that?" "Close your eyes, champ," Elias said. Matías obeyed, laughing. When he opened them, in front of him was a beautiful kite with the colors of the sky at sunset. "Is it for me? Not just for you?" Elias replied, excited. "It's ours. We built it with hope, so that you'll never forget that even the invisible, like the wind, can lift us." They ran to the field. Elias held the kite, Matías pulled the string, and together they made it fly. Clara watched them from the bench, wiping away a tear. And then Elias understood. God hadn't just given him his daughter back. He had gifted him a grandson of the soul. Matías wasn't just any child. He was a messenger, a divine spark that entered his life when he needed it the most. "Thank you, God," Elias whispered, looking up at the sky. "Thank you for teaching me that having hope, even when everything seems lost, is one of the bravest acts a human being can have." And so, between laughter, wind, and hot chocolate, the story of three hearts that came together through a miracle called faith came to an end. If this story touched your soul, don't keep it to yourself. Write in the comments, "I also choose to have hope," and share this video with someone who needs to remember that God is never late. Thank you for watching until the end. Subscribe if you want to keep receiving stories that heal, inspire, and remind you that even when we can't see a way out, God is already preparing the door.